Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're strapping in for a journey 10 years into the future. We're not talking about flying cars just yet, but something equally fundamental, really, to global trade. How the ships that carry everything across our oceans will look and operate, say, by 2035.
And to navigate this, we've pulled insights from a really compelling source. It's a detailed report compiled from a wide sweep of the maritime industry.
Okay.
This isn't just one analyst's guess. It brings together views from ship owners, operators, the people actually out at sea, service providers, many more. It's like a chorus of perspectives.
Exactly. Our mission in this deep dive is to take this rich material, pull out the absolute most important nuggets, and give you that shortcut, to understanding the complex forces shaping the future of global shipping.
Because the report makes it clear, the next decade is less about incremental change
Right.
and more about a fundamental transformation. It's being driven by, well, a trio of massive forces: decarbonization, digitalization, and ongoing geopolitical shifts.
So the big question is, what does this seismic shift actually mean? For the vessels themselves, and I think critically, for the people who work aboard them.
That's it.
Okay, let's start with that visual then. What will the ships of 2035 actually look like? The report's reader poll had a perhaps counterintuitive finding here.
It did, yeah. When readers were asked about the exterior of new ships in 2035, the majority felt they'll look surprisingly similar to today.
Uh-huh.
The expectation isn't some radical Starship Enterprise redesign.
Huh, that's interesting. With all the talk of green tech, I might have expected something totally different. Why is the exterior evolution expected to be more, well, evolutionary?
Well, there are practical constraints, things like port infrastructure around the world that dictate certain size and shape limitations.
Okay.
Classification societies also have rules that influence design, so changes will likely be additions or modifications rather than ground-up aesthetic overhauls.
Like adding bolt-ons, essentially. What kind of bolt-ons might we actually see then?
Think more visible sustainability features. Wind-assisted propulsion systems. Actual sails or rotor sails, they're expected to become more common.
Right.
We'll likely see air lubrication systems, reducing friction under the hull. There will probably be larger or repositioned fuel tanks for alternative fuels.
Huh.
And maybe modifications to the superstructure to cut down wind resistance.
Okay.
As one quote in the report puts it, function will still dictate form, though sustainability demands will reshape certain visible elements over time.
So the shell looks familiar, but you mentioned earlier that the inside is where the radical transformation is happening. What does that contrast mean?
This is where the real deep dive into the tech comes in.
Yeah.
The report has a great line, something like, in 10 years, the smartest ships may look familiar from the quayside, but function entirely differently from within.
Okay, that paints a picture. What's changing so dramatically inside the vessel?
This is the realm of digitalization. We're talking about digital control rooms becoming standard, systems deeply integrated with sensors everywhere, and operations increasingly assisted by artificial intelligence.
Okay.
The report highlights a convergence of technologies. AI for predictive safety and operational decisions. The Internet of Things, IoT, that network of connected sensors for real-time monitoring.
Right.
Big data analytics to crunch all that information for things like route optimization and predictive maintenance, and even blockchain, potentially, for secure logistics and compliance.
So all these different technologies aren't just running in parallel, they're starting to talk to each other. They're integrating.
Exactly. They're integrating to create a fundamentally different operating environment on board.
And you said earlier that decarbonization is the biggest driver, the main push.
It's identified as the strongest tailwind by the experts in the report, yeah. Combined with digitalization, it's really forcing this pivotal moment. Companies who move early, leverage these changes, they stand to gain a real competitive edge.
But all this innovation and clear direction, it doesn't eliminate uncertainty, right? What are the big question marks hanging over this future?
No, absolutely not. The report highlights 4 key areas of uncertainty that make long-term planning tricky.
Okay.
One is fuel price volatility, always a factor, but even more so with new fuels. Then there's regulatory ambiguity. Are the rules clear enough? Will they change? Technological immaturity. Some promising technologies like fuel cells or carbon capture aren't fully proven yet at the massive scale shipping needs. And finally, significant infrastructure gaps. Ports around the world just aren't ready to reliably bunker every kind of alternative fuel yet.
So if you're ordering a new ship now, With all that uncertainty, how do you design it? How do you cope with a future where the rules or the best fuel might change?
Flexibility, that's the key. The recommended solution for new builds is modular configurations and fuel systems that can handle multiple fuel types,
Ooh,
allowing the vessel to adapt as the landscape becomes clearer and new fuels become more viable and widely available.
and woven through all of this tech talk, the report keeps coming back to the human element. People.
Fundamentally, yes. Technology on a ship has to work in a really challenging environment, often far from support.
Right.
The report strongly emphasizes that designing these systems needs real-world feedback, especially from the seafarers who will actually use them day in and day out.
Oh, makes sense.
As the source warns, designing in isolation creates significant cost, resistance from users, and ultimately risk.
Oh.
The call to action is clear. Manufacturers must incorporate seafarer feedback in design.
That makes total sense. You don't want to build a high-tech bridge nobody can actually operate safely or efficiently. Let's shift gears slightly and look at the rules governing all this. The regulatory landscape, that's a massive force shaping the future.
Huge.
Regulation is there for good reasons: environment, safety, labor standards, with bodies like the IMO setting the global framework.
That's the purpose, yes. But the report points to a significant challenge. The pace of regulatory progress often lags behind technological development and, frankly, industry needs. The reader poll was quite decisive here. Around three-quarters believe global legislation won't keep up with tech innovation by 2035.
So, if global rules are slow or perhaps not enforced uniformly, what's the consequence? What happens then?
Well, it creates an uneven playing field, and it prompts regional bodies, especially the European Union, to step in with their own regulations.
Right.
One commentator in the report put it bluntly: the best written rules don't seem to change much at sea, which suggests, a perception of a gap between policy and practical reality.
What does the industry need from regulators to make this transition work more smoothly then?
Clarity and certainty. Businesses need clear, predictable signals from policymakers to justify the huge, long-term investments required for compliance and innovation.
Big money.
Absolutely. Regulation and technology aren't separate forces. They constantly influence and push each other. The general expectation is that regulations will continue to evolve, but legislation, particularly at the global level aiming for uniformity, will likely move slower than industry players who are already experimenting or acting. The report suggests the industry itself needs to show leadership alongside societal expectations.
What are some of these big upcoming regulations that are really forcing change towards 2035? What should we be watching?
A major one is the IMO's net zero framework. This includes measures that start kicking in from 2028 with the ambitious goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2050.
Wow.
And the financial bite here is significant. The report calculated that using traditional bunker fuel, that's the heavy fuel oil most ships burn today, could add something like $2,500 a day in cost for a non-eco Capesize vessel by 2028, a Capesize being one of the largest bulk carriers.
Okay.
By 2035, that penalty could balloon to $15,000 a day.
Wow, that's a huge stick. What does that translate to across the industry? Is there a total figure?
For the fleet surveyed in the report, it equates to an eye-watering 82% premium on fleet bunker costs by 2035. We're talking almost $100 billion in potential extra costs just for fuel if they don't switch to cleaner alternatives.
Okay, that kind of financial pressure definitely forces action. What else is on the regulatory horizon?
In Europe, you have the EU Emissions Trading System, EU ETS, which effectively puts a price on carbon for ships calling at EU ports.
Right.
And the Fuel EU maritime regulations, which mandate the use of cleaner fuels over time. Ship owners need serious expertise to navigate these complexities, covering everything from technical compliance to fuel sourcing.
Yeah.
The IMO's Ballast Water Management (BWM) convention, that's about preventing invasive aquatic species, is also coming fully into force for 100% of verified emissions by 2025-2030. Requires significant investment in treatment systems.
Okay. More costs?
And EU regulations will also start covering methane and nitrous oxide emissions, not just CO2. On the autonomous side, the Maritime Autonomous Surface Ships, MASS code, is being developed a framework for crewless or remotely operated vessels.
Right.
Carbon Intensity Indicator, CII regulations, measuring ship efficiency, are likely to get tighter. And there are new emission control areas, ECAs, being established Canadian Arctic, Northeast Atlantic. Plus, technical amendments allowing ships to optimize engine performance in different ways.
That's a lot to keep track of. One interesting thought the report raises is about who drives the regulatory push if global bodies are perceived as slow.
Yes, it suggests that private initiatives and industry consortiums might actually lead by example.
Hmm.
They could use technologies like blockchain for enhanced traceability and accountability, demonstrating what's possible and potentially nudging regulators to catch up or adopt similar standards.
Let's swing back to fuels, because despite those massive financial penalties we just discussed for traditional fuel, the reader poll had another surprising result here.
It did. 49% of readers, almost half, still think the majority of the global fleet will be running primarily on traditional bunker fuel by 2035.
Interesting.
This view probably links back to the idea that ships won't look radically different, partly because the infrastructure for alternative fuels isn't fully there yet, and new fuels often require different tank sizes or locations.
The IMO framework encourages dual-fuel ships, but companies aren't necessarily betting the farm on one specific future fuel just yet.
Exactly. It's planting the seeds for ordering vessels capable of using alternative fuels. But as one expert quoted in the report admitted, there's no clear consensus or crystal ball to say which specific zero-carbon fuel, like green ammonia or methanol, will be the dominant answer globally.
Right.
So the business case for committing fully to one specific next-generation fuel isn't universally clear for every ship type or route yet.
What's the current state of the fleet, then, in terms of alternative fuel capability? What percentage are we talking?
Today, less than 8% of the global fleet can run on alternative fuels.
Okay, pretty small.
But if you look at the order book, the ships currently being built, over half will be alternative fuel capable.
That's a big jump.
It's a huge jump, quintupling in a decade. But it's crucial to remember that most of these dual-fuel ships delivered today still operate primarily on traditional bunker fuel because it's cheaper or the alternative just isn't available everywhere they go.
One perspective in the report was quite pessimistic, though, about the pace of fuel transition.
Yes, there was one columnist who argued that no truly carbon-neutral fuel solution is deployable at scale quickly enough to meet that 2035 timeframe.
Okay.
Their take was that the new fuel levies might just translate to more expensive freight for consumers rather than actually driving significant decarbonization, especially if the global fleet keeps growing. The new fuel levy will only lead to more expensive freight and not to actual decarbonization, was their stark conclusion.
So is there any consensus on what the fuel mix will look like by 2035? Or is it just complicated?
Experts in the report generally agree that we are firmly entering and will remain in a multi-fuel era for quite some time.
Okay.
There won't be one single silver bullet fuel for everyone. Not for a while, anyway.
What will influence a ship owner's fuel choice, then? What goes into that decision?
Oh, it's complex. Factors include the vessel's typical route distance, the availability of different fuels in the ports they call at, the ship's size and type, and increasingly regional regulations like those in the EU.
What are the initial likely options we'll see more of in the near term, the frontrunners?
Liquefied natural gas, LNG, methanol, and biofuels are highlighted as the main initial options expected to gain traction. Ammonia is tipped for wider adoption, but that really depends on the build-out of green ammonia production capacity. That's the bottleneck.
What about existing ships? Can they switch?
For existing vessels that weren't built with alternative fuels in mind, biofuels might be the only technically viable alternative in many cases. But the report points out there's currently a severe global supply shortage for sustainable biofuels for shipping. Big challenge there.
And where do these future fuels actually come from? How are they made?
The report stresses that the availability of clean energy sources, wind, solar, hydro, is absolutely critical for producing green versions of fuels like ammonia, methanol, and hydrogen.
Right, green hydrogen is key.
Exactly. Countries with high renewable potential like the US, China, Australia, and those in the Middle East are expected to become major production hubs. Emerging hubs include places like India, Colombia, Chile, and Egypt.
What about more exotic possibilities like nuclear power for ships? Is that on the table?
It's definitely being considered and discussed in the industry, but the report suggests there are simply too many technical, regulatory, and public perception issues to resolve for it to become a widespread option in commercial shipping by 2035. Probably further out, if ever.
So picture 2035, what does the fueling infrastructure look like? A network of...
It's expected to be a hybrid network. We'll see retrofitted terminals at major ports, potentially floating energy storage units, and increasingly, AI-optimized fuel distribution networks using real-time data to figure out where and when different fuels are needed. Much smarter logistics.
And tying this back to our earlier point about the human element.
Yes, the report makes it very clear that transitioning to these new fuels and technologies demands massive investment, not just in hardware, but critically in the seafarers. The human capital required to manage this change, the people on board are fundamental to making this future work.
Speaking of people, let's dive into how this digital decarbonizing future is changing the experience of seafarers. The report calls out connectivity as a huge transformative theme for life at sea.
Oh, absolutely. It's fundamentally altering the environment on board. Vessels are transitioning from feeling like these remote islands, cut off from the world,
Yeah.
to becoming connection hubs or remote offices.
What are the practical benefits seafarers are seeing from better internet access? What does it mean for them day to day?
Well, the biggest one highlighted is the ability to connect back home regularly. This significantly reduces isolation and has a profoundly positive impact on mental well-being. Yeah. The report mentioned a survey where personal interactions enabled by connectivity were 23 times more likely to feel positive than negative for seafarers. It also improves operational decisions. You're not always having to make complex calls in isolation. You can access shore support or data.
Right.
Plus, all the things we take for granted ashore, social media, web browsing, streaming, online shopping, gaming, it just makes downtime more engaging, more normal.
Is this level of connectivity universal across the fleet now? Or are there still gaps?
Not yet. There are still gaps. The report notes that about 13% of vessels surveyed still lack crew connectivity, but the trend is accelerating rapidly towards high bandwidth and low latency, similar to what you'd expect in an office or at home, especially with newer satellite technologies coming online.
Is connectivity becoming a deal breaker for crew? For attracting and keeping people?
Absolutely. The report identifies it as the #1 driver for crew retention and career decisions.
Wow, number one.
Yeah. Improved connectivity is an essential expectation for people coming out to sea, is a quote. New entrants, particularly younger ones, might not even consider a career at sea without clear, conducive communication plans. It's becoming table stakes.
So what's the prediction for 2035?
By 2035, full broadband is expected to be the baseline standard, especially on larger vessels. Predictions suggest it could be free for a vast majority of the fleet, potentially 75–95%.
Free.
Yeah. The report argues that fleets without this level of connectivity will find it increasingly hard to compete for talent. It'll be a major differentiator.
Can better connectivity actually lead to seafarers having longer careers, staying at sea longer?
The argument is strong, yeah. Being able to stay connected with family, participate in significant life events remotely, access digital resources improves overall quality of life and job satisfaction.
Makes sense.
This can directly combat loneliness and isolation, making a career at sea feel more sustainable from a work-life balance perspective. It also provides access to online medical and mental health care and enables online courses for upskilling and career advancement right there on the ship.
Okay, so it sounds overwhelmingly positive. But the report also brings up some significant challenges and nuances about this connectivity revolution. It's not all smooth sailing.
No, definitely not. It's not without its downsides and complexities. A major concern voiced in the report is the potential for connectivity to lead to what they call a micromanaged hell.
Ooh.
Yeah. Shore-based management can push down an overwhelming amount of bureaucracy and tasks via constant communication, leading to information overload and feeling constantly scrutinized. Are we turning a ship into a micromanaged hell? Is a provocative question posed in the report.
Right. Always on.
Exactly. There's also the risk that crew can become disabled if they don't adapt, needing to unlearn old ways of working independently and relearn how to operate in a constantly connected environment. Balancing access with managing fatigue is another point some companies try to limit internet time, which raises questions.
And that control aspect touches on trust, doesn't it, between shore and ship?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
The report mentions a palpable sense of frustration, even feeling patronizing when connectivity is controlled or restricted.
Yeah.
A seafarer's quote captures it perfectly. So we are trusting them with our ships, but we can't trust them with connectivity.
Powerful point.
The conversation needs to shift from a control mindset to a trust-based one. And crucially, the report warns that connectivity alone isn't the magic bullet for long-term crew retention.
Okay.
While it helps well-being, enduring retention is built on deeper foundations. Inclusion, having a sense of purpose, clear career progression, recognition, opportunities for upskilling, and a degree of agency in their work. We have to stop waving connectivity as a magic wand, as the report puts it.
How does improved connectivity impact competence and learning at sea? Does it help people get better at their jobs?
Oh, massively. It's a huge enhancer.
Yeah.
Real-time communication, remote guidance, access to training materials, immediate data exchange all lead to better decision-making, improved operational efficiency, and enhanced safety.
Right.
Enhanced bandwidth enables real-time training, remote mentoring, and smoother digital operations. That's a key benefit.
So ships could become like classrooms.
Sort of, yeah. The report floats the idea that with the right digital infrastructure and a supportive culture, vessels can become floating learning environments that empower crew to solve problems in real time. But this technology only works if complemented by robust human systems, strong leadership, a culture of feedback, accountability.
Technology isn't enough on its own.
Never. As the source concludes, we've seen best results when connectivity enables, not replaces, professional development.
Looking ahead to 2035 with all this tech, how much of a seafarer's daily routine will actually change? The poll suggested most manual operations will still be performed by the crew.
That was the view of the majority of readers surveyed, yeah. Technology is seen less as a replacement for people and more as an enabler.
Okay.
Its primary function will be to remove the mundane, repetitive tasks, allowing seafarers to focus on higher-value work requiring their judgment and expertise.
Like what kind of tasks?
The report suggests up to 40–50% of tasks like routine monitoring, reporting, basic maintenance diagnostics, and tedious form filling could potentially be automated or shifted ashore.
But tasks requiring human judgment will always remain. The critical thinking stuff.
Absolutely. Anything requiring immediate judgment, evaluation of complex situations, on-the-spot coordination, and critically, any form of emergency response, that remains human. The report points out that the first law of the sea, the duty to render assistance to those in peril, is something inherently difficult for purely autonomous systems to execute. It's also noted that the underlying machinery needs to catch up. Systems like ballast water treatment or exhaust scrubbers, even modern ones, often still require significant manual intervention. Automation needs robust, reliable design and support networks to genuinely reduce crew workload. It's not just about the software.
So what roles are likely to remain firmly with the crew? What are people definitely still doing?
Watchkeeping, critical safety and compliance checks, mooring operations, cargo care, and hands-on repairs and maintenance, those core functions. The workflow around these tasks will be digitally assisted reporting, route planning, documentation will be done via systems and decision support tools, and AI will reduce the need for constant manual monitoring and data entry. But the actions themselves, still largely human.
The report uses a phrase, the crew burden cycle. What does that entail? Sounds ominous.
It's described as a workload time bomb. There's a significant gap between the official workers' records and the reality, with falsified records sadly common.
Yeah.
Shore leave is minimal or non-existent for many, and fatigue is a major concern. Relentless schedules, insufficient rest periods, the lack of opportunity to step ashore to decompress, particularly on older vessels, lead to severe frustration and deteriorating morale.
And it's a double whammy, isn't it? Old ships plus new tech.
Exactly. It's a dual challenge. Managing an aging fleet while trying to adopt new technology. Older ships demand more maintenance, often deferred maintenance, and repairs frequently eat into precious off-duty time or shore leave, what the report calls flogged hours.
Flogged hours, right.
There's significant psychological strain from constantly trying to keep aging systems running with inadequate resources or time.
And then comes the added layer of stress from adopting new tech on top of that.
Precisely. Seafarers often feel frustrated because they are expected to install, optimize, and operate complex new technology without sufficient training, support, or often adequate documentation.
So the promised benefits don't always show up.
The promised reduction in workload that technology is supposed to bring hasn't always materialized, no. Instead, the implementation itself creates new stressors. Companies expecting immediate results, officers being responsible for unfamiliar, complex equipment, and technical documentation being poor or hard to follow. Seafarers are forced to self-teach while juggling their existing duties and that maintenance backlog. The report has a memorable line here. The glossy promises made by technology salespeople crumble in the face of real-world pressures and unrealistic expectations.
Wow, that's blunt.
The essential takeaway from this section is that the current reality for many crew is just too much to do, not enough people to do it, and it all being too difficult to get right under these conditions.
That paints a really challenging picture for the people at sea. Let's shift our focus to the land side for a moment. Ports are obviously critical connectors in this system, absolutely crucial for the efficiency of shipping, particularly in reducing turnaround time.
They are absolutely vital. And the challenge in ports, similar in some ways to ships, is moving beyond just talking about innovation to actually implementing actionable strategies, demonstrating real-world examples, and achieving measurable results, getting things done.
Connectivity must be just as vital in ports as it is on ships, surely.
Even more so, arguably. Reliable, real-time connectivity ashore is described in the report as like oxygen for digitalization.
Okay.
Despite the global nature of maritime transport, there's a surprising lack of true digital integration between all the different players in a port ecosystem. The terminal, the authorities, the truckers, the rail links.
Silos.
Exactly. Fortunately, recent advances in satellite technology and other comms are finally providing the necessary underlying infrastructure to connect everything up.
What's holding ports back then? Why isn't it happening faster?
The report points to a few things: cultural conservatism, resistance to change, just mindset issues, a fear of exposing dark data they have but maybe aren't using effectively or don't want others to see. Integration complexity between different systems is a big barrier. Many ports are burdened by legacy systems that discourage experimentation, and some are simply paralyzed by the sheer volume of data they're collecting but don't know what to do with.
Are there examples of ports getting it right?
Yes, successful approaches do exist. The Port of Gijón in Spain is cited as an example. They've adopted a modular, non-disruptive approach by layering sensors over existing infrastructure.
Yeah, okay. Smart.
This phased model respects the reality of budget and operational constraints and allows data maturity to grow organically, step by step.
So it's not just about buying the latest gadget, it's about how you integrate it and change the way you work. Process matters.
Exactly. The emphasis in the report is on strategic integration into actual workflows. The real value isn't just digitizing inefficiency, it's transforming how teams and operations function.
Right.
The report uses a good analogy. Buying a high-performance tool like a Ferrari, but using it like a basic Fiat, means you don't get the potential return on investment. You need to redesign the process to match the tool's capability. The industry must adopt new tools and embrace a new mindset.
Fragmentation and lack of standardization used to be huge issues in port tech. Has that improved? Are things talking to each other better now?
Yes, it has improved. Modern software as a service, SaaS platforms, and application programming interfaces, APIs basically, ways for different software to talk to each other make seamless integration much more attainable now than in the past.
Good.
The report advocates for achieving incremental wins to build momentum and get internal buy-in for bigger changes. Start small, show value.
What's the potential impact of data sharing in ports if everyone played nicely together?
Huge potential. Sharing AI-driven operational data transparently among stakeholders, say the port authority, the terminal operator, the shipping line, the logistics providers, can unlock massive opportunities for optimization and competitive advantage. A truly multi-model data sharing environment could fundamentally reshape trade patterns and logistics efficiency. Big picture stuff.
And just like with the seafarers, the human element in adopting digital tools ashore is critical. It's not just tech.
Not at all. It's as much a human challenge as a technical one. Trust is essential to sustaining transformation. The tools must empower people, not just monitor or replace them. Training, clarity on why changes are happening, and inclusion of employees in the process are key to overcoming skepticism and resistance.
Yeah.
One success story I mentioned was a company that deliberately paused after a major cloud migration to allow employees time to explore and understand the new tools. That led to unexpected internal innovations because people felt comfortable.
Where's the biggest untapped potential for using data in ports? What's the next frontier?
Beyond simple cost savings, the real opportunity lies in using aggregated data to develop new business models.
Ah, interesting.
By combining different data streams, stakeholders can benchmark their performance, identify best practices, and find entirely new ways to offer services or create value.
Documentation bottlenecks are notorious in ports. Paperwork everywhere. Is tech helping there?
It's a major area needing improvement still. Inconsistencies in critical documents like the Statement of Facts, Notice of Readiness, Bills of Lading, they create huge friction and delays.
Yeah.
The need is for robust data management and governance, and increasingly using AI to extract, standardize, and interpret information from these documents, turning chaotic data into a usable asset,
AI can read the documents.
getting better at it all the time. The report even suggests that tools like ChatGPT, with their ability to process and understand natural language in varied formats, might make perfect industry-wide standardization less critical than previously thought for getting value from these documents. AI could bridge the gaps.
So what's the path forward for ports? What's the main message?
Collaboration is key. The report strongly advocates for shared value ecosystems, open communication, shared performance indicators, and collaborative digital platforms as the future model. Working together, ultimately, success requires a new mindset across the port community. The rapid pace of change in AI, digital ecosystems, maritime operations, even what constitutes performance, means the ability to unlearn and relearn every few years will be crucial. Digital agility is becoming a defining competitive capability.
The call to action seems clear. Don't wait for perfection.
Exactly. The report encourages ports and stakeholders not to wait for perfect industry-wide solutions. Engage, experiment with modular approaches, and actively drive collaboration. The gap between easily usable consumer technology and enterprise tools is narrowing, and moving fast and smart offers a significant competitive edge.
Let's turn our attention now to the builders of these ships, the shipyards. What's the picture like there regarding innovation towards 2035? Are they leading the charge?
It's a mixed bag, according to the report. Some yards, particularly in leading shipbuilding nations like South Korea, are definitely pushing the envelope.
Okay.
HD Hyundai is mentioned as focusing heavily on AI, autonomy, smart yard concepts, even using humanoid robots for welding. Pretty futuristic stuff.
Wow. Robots welding.
Yeah. But this level of innovation isn't standard across the global industry. Not by a long shot.
How do the readers see it?
The reader poll reflected this mixed picture. Most readers felt shipyards could be doing more to foster innovation and propose new designs, rather than simply building exactly what owners specify.
What are some straightforward, immediate improvements suggested for yards? Things they could do now.
Focus on basics that have a big impact over the ship's life. Things like improving steelwork quality and paint protection systems up front. That can significantly reduce lifetime maintenance costs.
Right. Build it better from the start.
Exactly. Similarly, improving machinery design and reliability is essential, especially if we move towards more autonomous vessels that rely on systems functioning without constant human intervention.
Who typically initiates innovation in this industry? Is it the yards or the owners?
It's traditionally quite conservative, and owners tend to be the ones pushing for the latest innovations in their new builds. Yards are increasingly partnering with owners on loftier design goals. But again, this isn't a uniform trend across the industry. Design cycles are still heavily driven by owner requirements.
How do we get more innovation then?
For genuine innovation to take hold more broadly, the report argues for much tighter collaboration loops between yards, designers, and operators, and stronger incentives for yards to invest in R&D and think about lifecycle performance, not just build cost.
Right.
A shared commitment to lifecycle outcomes can turn yards into innovation partners rather than just builders, is a key point.
Is the pressure on yards to change given the regulatory and fuel shifts we talked about?
Yes, the clock is ticking on emissions rules and the need for new fuel capabilities, which does create pressure, definitely. But there's also significant inertia. The report notes that many yards remain CapEx focused, not life cycle optimized, meaning their priority is the upfront construction cost rather than the ship's performance and maintenance needs over its decades of operation. Short-term view sometimes.
What else holds them back?
Another hindrance highlighted is the lack of standardized systems compared to industries like aviation, where components are highly uniform. Even supposedly sister vessels built in the same yard can differ significantly in their fit-out, which makes the standardization needed for things like autonomous systems much more difficult.
But there are positive signs in some areas. It's not all doom and gloom.
No. Some yards are actively investing in their own R&D, and there's a trend towards yards partnering with owners much earlier in the concept design phase, often using shared digital models or digital twins. Though the report notes that this collaborative design process is still typically initiated by the owner, not the yard.
Okay, let's talk about the technology everyone's talking about, artificial intelligence, AI. The reader survey for this report pinpointed AI as having the most significant impact on maritime operations by 2035.
That was a strong consensus, yeah. And the market reflects it. The maritime AI market is already seeing rapid growth, almost tripling in value in just 1 year recently. Huge interest in investment.
What are the concrete ways AI is being used or is expected to be used by 2035? Where will we see it?
Well, automation is the top use case mentioned. AI is being applied for route optimization, factoring in real-time weather, currents, traffic data to find the most efficient and least polluting path.
Saving fuel, cutting emissions.
Exactly. That directly impacts emissions reduction and operational efficiency. It assists companies and crews with analyzing vast amounts of data in real time, enabling predictive maintenance, fixing things before they break, and improving risk assessments.
Okay.
The report cites McKinsey findings that AI is already helping reduce forecast errors, lower logistics costs, optimize inventory, and improve service levels across supply chains. So, real business benefits.
And how does AI impact the workforce on board, the crew numbers?
Well, if AI takes over routine tasks, it theoretically frees up human time for other things, perhaps more complex things. The reader poll shows a strong expectation of this. 74% expect fewer crew members by 2035.
Three-quarters.
And over half anticipate that at least 25% of current manual operations could become redundant due to automation.
Which jobs are most affected?
The roles most likely to see significant impact from automation by 2035, according to the survey, are in navigation, engine room operations, and maintenance, the core operational roles.
The ultimate AI-driven future involves autonomous ships, right? Crewless vessels. How does the report see that by 2035? Is it happening?
Autonomous ships, where the operating system makes complex decisions without human input, are seen as a more extreme future version. It requires AI development on par with self-driving cars, which is still evolving.
Right.
Interestingly, the reader poll was split on whether the adoption of autonomous vessels will actually decrease shipping costs by 2035. It's far from a guaranteed efficiency gain in the near term, it seems. Lots of upfront cost and complexity.
Which parts of shipping are most likely to automate first?
The sectors expected to be most affected by automation were container shipping and short sea shipping. They made up 90% of reader responses, likely because their routes are more predictable and repetitive, less complex environments.
What about safety? Does AI make shipping safer? Or is it a new risk?
It's a mixed bag. AI can be used to identify safety and security events, potentially spotting issues faster than humans. However, readers were quite split on whether AI will actually improve overall safety by 2035.
Really?
Yeah. 49% thought incidents would either stay the same or increase, with 28% specifically predicting an increase in incidents.
Why would they increase? What are the worries?
The biggest safety concerns identified with AI integration was cybersecurity threats, the risk of systems being hacked or manipulated, followed by equipment malfunction, and crucially, human error in overseeing or relying too heavily on the AI. Over-reliance.
We're seeing companies making big investments in AI, though, pouring money in.
Absolutely. The report highlights significant spending. C.H. Robinson is using AI agents to process millions of tasks and orders. CMA CGM, the shipping line, has committed over $500 million to AI and digitalization initiatives. Big bets are being placed.
There's a powerful quote in the report from a futurist. There is no reason and no way that a human mind can keep up with an artificial intelligence machine by 2035. That sounds pretty definitive.
It does. That quote sets a dramatic stage for the potential speed and capability of AI, but the report quickly brings the focus back to the core question. What does this mean for the human talent in the industry?
Right.
While AI excels at data processing, automation, optimization, the report stresses that the core of maritime leadership, things like strategic thinking, building relationships, navigating complex crises, applying real-world judgment that remains uniquely human.
So AI is a tool, not a wholesale replacement for expertise or leadership.
Precisely. AI is a tool, not a replacement for human ingenuity, is a key takeaway. Leaders will need to interpret AI insights, anticipate risks that algorithms might miss, adapt strategies requiring human judgment that an algorithm currently cannot replicate.
What kind of workforce strategies do companies need then in this AI-driven world? How do they prepare people?
Investment in upskilling and reskilling is crucial. Equip employees with the digital literacy and problem-solving skills needed to work alongside AI.
Makes sense.
Prioritizing soft skills, things like communication, teamwork, leadership, resilience, alongside technical knowledge is vital. It's about finding the right balance between automation and retaining essential human expertise.
What does the future employee look like?
The future employee will likely need to adapt to hybrid roles, blending technical understanding with human-centric skills. With AI handling routine tasks, humans can focus on higher-value activities like complex planning, innovation, or managing client relationships. Ultimately, humans are expected to retain responsibility for final decisions in high-stakes situations, using AI to enhance, not dictate, their judgment.
How do companies address the very real fear employees have about AI leading to job losses. That's a big concern.
Yeah, it is. The report suggests transparent communication is essential. Leaders need to explain how AI will support and augment roles rather than just eliminate them. Providing clear examples of how AI takes away tedious tasks to free up time for more interesting work can help. Focusing on career development and training opportunities ensures employees see AI as an enabler for their own growth, not just a threat to their current job. Framing matters.
Finally, let's talk about data itself and how performance is measured in this increasingly digital future. We hear a lot about high-frequency sensor data getting data constantly.
Yes, there's definitely a trend towards installing more sensors collecting data points very frequently, which opens up new possibilities, for sure. However, the report highlights that for the majority of the current global fleet, the primary challenge and focus is still on capturing high-quality, low-frequency data.
Okay, less frequent data. Like what?
Things like daily noon reports or bunker consumption figures, engine readings taken manually, and figuring out how to effectively blend that with the higher frequency sensor data.
Why is that low-frequency data still so important? Isn't more data always better?
Not necessarily on its own. When used with sophisticated digital models of a specific vessel, digital twins, effectively even that lower frequency data can provide really high-quality insights that reflect the unique characteristics and performance of that particular ship over time. It gives you context.
So the magic is in mixing them.
Yes, the power comes from blending them. Combining that reliable core low-frequency data with a layer of high-frequency sensor feeds gives you deeper insights, a smaller margin of error, and more confidence in your performance assessments.
Right.
The report points out that high-frequency data alone isn't always sufficient for critical tasks like driving route optimization. A good weather forecast might still be more influential. Its value is often in refining the vessel's fuel consumption model and validating its accuracy over time.
Collecting and using all this data sounds complicated across a diverse fleet, with old ships, new ships.
It is. It's a daunting task. Benchmarking performance across a disparate fleet is challenging because the data is often fragmented, inconsistent, sometimes just plain wrong. Even supposedly sister vessels can perform differently based on how they're operated or maintained, and predicting the performance of older, used tonnage is particularly hard.
If a ship owner makes a big investment, say in retrofitting new energy efficiency technology like rotors or air lubrication, how do they prove the savings they were promised? How do they know it worked?
Good question. These kinds of investments, often once in a lifetime for a vessel, require robust verification. The report stresses the need for full-scale testing and ideally pilot projects to prove the business case in the real world, not just relying on theoretical modeling.
Right. Need proof.
And while methodologies for proving savings are emerging, getting standardized, reliable data on the actual efficiency gains from complex systems like wind assistance or air lubrication is difficult. There's so many variables. The effectiveness of the installation, the actual operating conditions, the route, the weather.
And the savings might be small percentages.
Exactly. The report notes that savings claims are often relatively small, maybe 3 to 5%. Proving those small savings reliably requires measurements with a much smaller uncertainty than the potential savings themselves. You can't do that with low-frequency data alone. You absolutely need to combine it with high-frequency data to reliably capture and prove those marginal gains.
So the combination of high and low frequency data is really the key to unlocking value and proving these investments.
It's essential. Getting the comprehensive global picture of emissions or voyage data requires combining both. And crucially, proving demonstrable savings from an investment needs that reliable low-frequency baseline coupled with a high-speed sensor layer. That combination reduces uncertainty and provides the reliability needed to make compelling investment cases both before you install the tech and after to verify it actually works.
So you need both sides of the coin.
You do. The report concludes this section by saying that the ability to effectively handle and blend both high and low frequency data is what will truly differentiate long-term partners in the complex space of vessel performance optimization. That's the skill needed.
Wow. That was truly a deep dive into the near future of shipping. We've gone from how the physical ships might look surprisingly similar to the radical digital transformation happening within. We've explored the powerful regulatory pressures and the complex multi-fuel landscape ahead, and spent time understanding the profound impact of connectivity and technology on the lives and work of seafarers.
Yeah, and we looked at the essential role ports play, the challenges and opportunities with data, touched on the mixed picture of innovation in shipyards.
and zeroed in on the anticipated force of AI, its potential benefits and challenges, and the crucial role human expertise will continue to play alongside it. And finally, how mastering data, both high and low frequency, is key to proving performance and driving investment.
That covers a lot of ground.
The core message seems to be that while the outward appearance of ships might not change drastically by 2035, their operational DNA, their soul, is being fundamentally rewritten, driven by intelligence, efficiency, and the pressing need for environmental accountability.
And hopefully you listening now have got a real shortcut to understanding this complex web of factors shaping maritime's next decade, drawing on perspectives directly from those working within the industry.
And thinking about everything we've covered, the rapid predicted advancement of AI, the industry's acknowledged challenge in keeping regulatory and technological pace, and the absolutely critical human element required at sea. How will that delicate balance between human decision-making, intuition, expertise on one hand, and AI-driven operations and recommendations on the other actually play out, on the bridge or in the engine room by 2035? It's a fascinating question, isn't it, given the speed of change and the deep human skills sailing requires.
Definitely something worth considering as we wrap up. A lot to think about there.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.